Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twillow Talk. I'm Tanis Coughlin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy, and I am a Reiki Master, Celtic Shamanic High Priestess, Galactic Ambassador, Channel, I do stuff. And I am joined by my beautiful co-host, Jennifer Jurkofsky. Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Jennifer Jurkofsky with Twillow Lifestyle and with My Holistic Self. And I am a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, intuitive life coach, Reiki and Saham Reiki master, do the energy stuff and do some other stuff. And,
We do lots of stuff. So, how is everyone else out there today? We have a few of you on, so let us know how you're doing. I know the energies this week seem like they're going to be a little bit better than last week. Last week with all those solar storms was kind of chaotic. Today feels a little lighter when I got up this morning, so I'm hopeful for the week. What do we have in our transits, Jen?
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because as of the 25th, we moved into the 37th gate. And so it's the gate of family, community, right? We're looking at that idea of, do we feel cohesion and collaboration, or do we feel like we're lacking in that? And so really it's about, this idea of strengthening bonds, right? And maybe even just kind of unlocking, we talk about like the divine heart, right? And just kind of looking at how do we bring that tenderness in? So again, the gene key side of things, it's this idea of moving from weakness. And in this case, weakness it's not about like being weak. It's just really this kind of imbalance between yin and yang, right? And this kind of shifting of poles, right? And how do we bring that back into balance? We have to move into equality. Right? And as we move into that understanding of equality, we can actually move into tenderness, right? And so that's this idea of what is actually happening with the gate right now. And so we may be feeling that imbalance, or we might be coming into that place of recognizing that it's all part of process and it's all okay, and we can really balance that out. And if so, then we can move into tenderness and really be able to be in that collaborative place and to be in that compassionate place and open our divine heart to, family, community, all that kind of stuff.
So that's what this week's about, family and community.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it'll be like that until the 1st of March. So we've still got a couple more days in that energy.
Beautiful. Yeah. Just want to say hello. We have Facebook user here. I believe it's Tracy. So thanks for joining us, Tracy. Good to see you. And she says, she's happy last week is over. So are you finding that as well, Tracy, that it seems a little lighter this week? It seems to be to me, but, we all have our own stuff. I think there's still a lot of that sort of ancestral clearing that's happening. And Tracy's also an energy healer, so she's sensitive to all this stuff too, and shaman and stuff. So, and this one is Tamara. Hello, Tamara. Tracy says yes, definitely. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, both of you. And if you ever get a chance, check out Tamara White Wolf on TikTok. She's doing amazing on there, as well as on her others. She's got channels, all the usual channels, right? Facebook and YouTube and all of that. She is a wonderful reader, and we have her on the show with Michelle on Wednesdays often. So thank you for joining us today, Tamara. Your name isn't showing up because you're coming through the Twillow Lifestyle Community Group, so it doesn't show up on our end, but that's who it is there. So.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So, should we do our usual shtick?
Let's do it.
All right. So, with Twillow Talk, it is our tradition that we pick a card and then talk about the subject. So this year we're using the Soul's Journey lesson cards with James Van Praagh because they have great little topics. So let's see what the guides. Oh, that was quick. Oh, interesting. Okay, so our word today is pride.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the mantra with it: I love myself, and I see myself in everyone. So different sense of pride from maybe what we would think first off. So look at that lovely mandala that's there. If we can get it to.
Beautiful. I love these cards. They're so pretty.
They are. Yeah, it's lovely. So pride. There we go. Mm-hmm. Pride. I love myself and I see myself in everyone.
Wonderful. It's interesting that would come out now too with the transit.
Yeah.
Being what it is, right? This idea of friendship and family and the role of the tribe, right? Mm-hmm. And emotionally being able to be part of that, and what do we need in order to be part of that? And here is this kind of understanding of the oneness.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's definitely about that in this context, right? The oneness, about seeing ourselves in everyone, and that everyone is in us. And that, that brings me to think about the mirroring effect too, right? So when somebody is triggering us, I mean, this is more loving side of it, but the other side is when somebody's triggering us, it's because they're mirroring something to us that we have in us that we're not particularly happy with.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess in some ways, this one is like encouraging you to be happy with yourself so that you don't get triggered, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely. Love yourself, all of your stuff, shadow as well. Mm-hmm. And then you can step out of those mirrored triggers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think part of it too is, we have such an interesting relationship with the word pride.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, both of us were kind of like, oh, interesting. Like, where is this card going to take us with that?
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And so when we think about this idea of loving ourselves, I mean, I deal with this with clients all of the time. Where it's like, well, yeah, I love myself. And it's like, well, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Well, nothing. Right. Well, where's the love in that? Right. And this idea that there's something wrong with us if we love ourselves too much, or if we...
Right. And what is too much?
Yeah.
What is loving yourself too much? Like, what does that mean exactly? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But this ability to see ourselves in everyone, it changes that dynamic so much. Mm-hmm. Right? And so if we're able to recognize that connectedness and realize that, we are all very unique, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And yet we are all so connected that what I see in the other, I can also see in myself. Mm-hmm. Right? And how do I navigate that? And then how does this love for self bring love for other?
Yeah. Letting compassion shine through.
Mm-hmm.
So Tamara says, I take pride as a lion would with my cub or my son.
Aww.
Yeah. Being proud of our kids is a beautiful thing. I think you're a Leo too, aren't you? I am too. So we had a show one time around Leo season where all of us were on. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, very cool.
We had chats around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and why do we see that? Why did we have that reaction about pride? Mm-hmm. What is the negative feeling that comes with pride? Is it that we think we're not worthy, or is it, what do you think?
I think it might go both ways, right? On one side of the spectrum, we're looking at not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough, always being able to find our own flaws, our weaknesses, being very critical, all of that kind of stuff. And then on the other side, there is this component of being egotistical, being self-centered, being narcissistic, being
Yeah.
right? And so I think that we, again, like such a perfect thing right now, we're talking about balance,
Yeah.
right? The yin and the yang of life. So here we are looking at these two kind of extreme ways to view it, but also recognizing that there's a huge spectrum in between of the ways that we can interact with this word,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So, it'd be great to hear from you guys as far as what you think of when you hear the word pride.
Hmm.
And it's interesting too, like, I think you said that it was Tamara who said about because it says Facebook user. I apologize if I
Yep.
don't remember who says
Yeah.
what.
I have it open so we can see the names because that's helpful.
Um,
So
Perfect.
yeah,
About the pride as a lion,
yeah,
because
Tamara.
when you think about it too, a family is a pride,
It is.
right? And so what does that mean? And what does that entail? And, can we recognizing pride in that sense of I love myself and I see myself in everyone, then can we, in that kind of tribal aspect, look at a pride in much broader terms?
Hmm. And she adds here too. So this is Tamara as well. I take pride in my work too.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's another whole sort of connotation of that, right? It's like when you take pride in your work, you are diligent, right? You do
Yeah.
due diligence with what you do, and you are, um, you know, you have your ethical framework and all of that stuff, which
Mhm.
comes in when you take pride in your work, which is so that's another sort of meaning, right?
Mhm.
Do we have our ethical standards, and what are our ethical standards, and what do they make us feel pride in
Mhm.
ourselves, right? Proud of ourselves,
Yeah.
um, in that sense. And ethical standards has come up for me a couple of times. Of course, I do HR work too. So, but it's also about what ethics is. What my ethical standards might be different from your ethical standards, right? And it doesn't make either of them wrong. It's just the stand, like our own self expectation. And do we live up to our own self expectation?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think about that? It's a funny
Well,
topic.
what's coming up for me is I do a lot of values work with clients,
Mhm.
right? And really kind of looking at, again, different components of it, but one, how do I feel value in my experience? What makes me feel valued? What makes me feel loved? What makes me feel like I'm part of, right?
Mhm.
And then the other side of it is what is important to me? What kind of values, what kind of characteristics, what kind of traits do I want in my experience? And how do I bring them into my reality? Right. And so when we're talking about pride here, there is this idea of like, I take pride in my ability to, right? Because it
Yeah.
brings something back to me and it makes me feel good in that sense. But also, I take pride in honoring what's important to me,
Right.
right? And making that part of my experience. And so when we talk about that love for self and that idea of self-care, it's not, I mean, bubble baths and candlelight are great, don't get me wrong, but it's really about making a life that you feel good living,
Yeah.
right? And how do we do that? Well, if we can take pride in what we're setting up for ourselves, then we can live that experience and really enjoy, and we are caring for ourselves and in turn able to care for all of those around us,
Yeah.
right? And
And so Tamir says, I take pride in my image too.
mm,
So is that um, your physical appearance as your image, or is that how you appear to the public? Right. That could be either of those.
yeah.
So, um, and I think it's good that we take pride in both, but it just raises that question: which one is the most important, I guess, in that, or is there one that's more important than
Or is
another?
there one?
Yeah.
So much too is about the idea of just recognizing that life is an experience. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is,
Hmm.
right? And so when we talk about, pride in our appearance, I think one of the things with that we have to be mindful of is that we pay attention to the potential judgments that are there, right?
From others,
So if
right? And from self.
yeah, I mean, from others, others can go away.
There's always going to be someone who's going to judge, right? It doesn't matter who you are,
right.
where you are, what you're doing.
I can't control what anybody else does, says, thinks, whatever, but I can my own internal processes, right? And so just being really careful that we don't fall into a place where we only feel pride if.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now there's a level of judgment there that leaves us open to feeling bad about ourselves.
Right. And that's where you get into that perfectionism thing, right? That we sometimes, if we fall into that, we're very hard on ourselves as opposed to just accepting where we're at.
Yeah. And also being really mindful of not making comparisons.
Right.
Right.
But does that word really, like, to me, I think that word does create that.
Well,
A bit of a comparative word.
A bit of why we sometimes go, oh, pride, right?
Yeah.
So there's a difference between I feel good in my skin. I feel good being able to feel good in my skin and whatever that means for me. If that means that I want to wear my pajamas for a week straight, so be it. If that means I want to get dolled up and, go into the Ritz, whatever, so be it. But it's about recognizing that I have the capacity to make that choice to feel good or not feel good about myself in this moment.
Yeah.
If I bring comparison in, either I'm comparing myself to somebody else or somebody is comparing themselves to me, whatever that comparison piece is, all of a sudden we run the risk of things not being as open, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're able to, exactly. If
Yeah.
we're able to gauge our own standards and that's what feels good for us, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
Best
But is
place
this,
to be.
exactly. And so making sure, what is this? For instance, I don't wear sweatshirts to my metaphysical shop.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And if that is what is important to you, then you honor that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take pride in your ability to honor what is important to you, recognizing that that might not be somebody else's standard, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
Right? And so
although I don't know, sweatshirts are pretty comfortable, Tamir. And they come pretty fancy these days. I think they're pretty fancy ones. But I get where you're coming from, right? We just make our own, like, that just doesn't feel right for me to do that. And so that's, totally
and
cool.
it's important to honor it if it doesn't feel right for us. So just
no, I get it. Yeah.
not as a
not as a
boss
boss
at
at my
job.
shop. Yeah.
Hey.
I get it. Yeah.
But again, right? It's about what we hold as a standard, why we hold it as a standard, right? What we think that it says about us, what it says if we don't hold that standard, right? Like there's a lot of room with this word for introspection, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Well, introspection is another form of self-care, right? It's all part of that because we have to be introspective in order to really figure out what we can be prideful of or be proud of ourselves for, what makes us proud. And that requires us doing that self-reflection, right? Because that's the only way we know if we're happy with what we've done or not happy with what we've done, is if we actually look at that or feel into it. Right?
Yeah. And knowing, where our comfort levels are and how much we're willing to play with that. Right? For self-growth, right? And so can I experiment? Can I, again, bring in, joy, humor, like we talked about last week?
Yeah.
Can I allow myself, to see things from an array of perspectives and then really hone in on what feels right for me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. She says, I also take pride in who I'm willing to work with. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and that's knowing our own boundaries, right?
Mhm.
Understanding where we put our boundaries and, what kind of behaviors we're willing to accept and which ones we're not. And
Mhm.
that's all about, being proud of where those boundaries are and being happy with that.
Yeah. Well, and again, coming back to, if we're looking at pride as a sense of loving, right,
Mm-hmm.
and loving oneself, then having those boundaries is a form of love.
Mm-hmm. And often it's a form of love for both people
Mhm.
in whatever that situation is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about, what, this is good, that is bad. And we've talked about labels before and all of that, and how
Yeah.
labels can be very limiting in a lot of ways. And yet we live in a world that honors and respects and sometimes doesn't, but
Yeah.
wants labels, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, like thinking about Tamara and the comment about being the boss, right? There is this kind of expectation that the boss is supposed to show up a certain way,
Right.
right? And so, if we honor that, we can take pride in our ability to honor that and feel good about honoring that. And if
Yeah.
we're that person who's like, heck no, I'm going to break every rule out there, then you're going to take pride in honoring that, right? And so it's
But
really,
where do those rules come from though?
yeah, well, and that's what I mean, right? Is it's about what what we're comfortable with, what we want in our experience, and how we honor that,
Mhm.
right? Because the other thing I talk to clients a lot about are the shoulds.
Oh yeah. Those shoulds. We should each other to death all the time.
Oh, do we ever? And
Oh
so
my
when we do the
goodness.
values worksheets, because we do them, I like to have them go through like the whole list of values and stuff. And before we even start to get into what we like or what we don't, I have them just go through and do a plus mark for things that make them feel good, a negative mark for things that don't feel so great. Because, there are some out there that we're like, oh, I don't like that. Right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then just a little neutral, 0 or nothing for the ones that are like, whatever. Right?
Yeah.
And then once they go through and pick what's really important to them, I say, go through it again. How much of those are actually yours? And how much of those are shoulds? I should
Yeah.
think this is important. I should think that's important. Right? Because when we
Yeah.
come back to this idea of pride and loving oneself, are we honoring what's actually important to us? Or are we honoring shoulds that have been placed upon us?
Mhm. Well, and look, that brings to mind the human design thing
Mhm.
because there's some of us that are kind of open and kind of absorb other people's shoulds easier, right? Depending on where we're at.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
that's the piece to work on. Which
Yeah.
which one is that again that does that? The
Well, there's a whole
manifesting
bunch of different
generator
things
or
that we can get into as all of that.
yeah.
Um, but then if you've got an open identity center, you might be taking on everybody else's shoulds as far as how you direct your life and what you think is important for you and, your view of who you are,
Yeah.
right? So like a person with an open G really has to be able to go with the flow and be
Mhm.
okay with, yeah, in this situation, I'm like this, and in that situation, I'm like that, and it's all okay,
Yeah.
right? Where somebody who's very defined is going to have very set ways of how they are, and that's just how they're gonna be, and it doesn't matter who you throw them in
Yeah.
with, right?
Yeah.
And so recognizing, you know, what areas we're more flexible and open in, and what areas we're more rigid in can also help us with those shoulds.
Yes.
Right, because rigidity could also come from conditioning,
Yeah.
So you might be open, but be very rigid because of all of the conditioning that has happened in your life. Right. So yeah, again, know thyself, which has been our theme, because that's what we're working on now.
That's a class we're working on, guys. So stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
9 weeks?
Being
It's
able
9
to
weeks, right? Our
9
class?
weeks.
9 weeks.
9 weeks. Yeah.
It's going to be
Super
big. There's
exciting.
3 of us doing it.
But yeah, that ability to know who we are allows us space to be able to embrace that, really. And in this sense, with this, the idea of pride, loving oneself is really embracing who we are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say, right? Can we embrace all of these different aspects of what makes us who we are, and then move from that place?
Right. And I think, that also brings to mind, like, you were saying some of us are really rigid, some of us are really like fluid. And I just, whenever that sort of thing comes up, I just would caution people not to judge whether one is right or wrong in those, right? Like, because I found myself going, oh yeah, fluid would be better, right? And then I'm like, well, maybe it's not, because fluid means there's no boundaries. And so there's good and bad in both of those. And so not being judgy about no matter which one you are in it, using it simply as a tool to understand yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's like we so much need to say, well, this is good and this is bad and this is right and this is wrong and this makes me happy, this makes me sad, and this is it just is. I don't know how many times I say that with clients and everything else. It just is.
Yeah.
The mind is putting a judgment on it, but it just is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Right? And if we want to change it, if how it is isn't serving us, if we're not okay with how it is, we have the power to work on that.
Yeah.
Right? And to make those adjustments and to explore different ways of being. But if we get really caught up in the labels, we get trapped.
Yeah.
And then we don't have that curiosity, and we don't have that ability to see what may or may not also be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It just opens our awareness more to take off those good and bad labels of stuff. Right. I know for myself, I've worked hard to keep that curiosity. So one of my favorite words, somebody comes up with something and I'm not necessarily feeling like it's in alignment or something, I'd be like, interesting. Trying to be like, okay, I'm going to feel into that. Like, it is interesting, so let's feel it. But trying not to be totally negative about it right away, because oftentimes that is the programming that comes up when you're doing that, right? You've had an experience back here where it was a bad outcome, so you're going to judge it as bad when it might not be an identical experience. And so let's look at that as interesting in the context of where you are right now and who it is with, and because there's always so many factors in every situation that creates a different outcome, right?
Yeah.
No matter what we're doing. And so I think that as if we can look at it, like you said, with curiosity, right? And that's where my interesting is okay, I'm open to being curious about this.
Yeah.
Not saying necessarily that it's for me, but I'm open to being curious about this. I think for me, that was a big change. Because I found myself often, this is earlier on my journey, I would find myself very often having a very strong moral compass. And in my youth, I had a very strong moral compass. Not that I don't have high standards of morality for myself, right? But that's a whole other topic. But anyway, but that brings with it that sort of judgment piece. And so that was something that I worked on in myself in terms of creating space to be curious and creating space to be interested in other points of view and interested in other stuff, right? Okay,
Yeah.
here's
When I love
Tamir says
that.
it's like a lock channel to adjust our levels in order to flow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, and the thing is, we may be locked, right?
Yep.
There might be no flow
Yep.
for a time.
And that's okay.
And then overflow.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh, I think we need to put a channel here.
Yeah.
Right? And then we adapt and we adjust, as you said. And then, and then maybe we change it again. Right? And it's all okay. This is another thing that comes up often, so often, is, we'll be going through something or processing something, and then the client will go, oh man, I wish I knew that. And then they go back through their entire history and judge themselves for everything that they didn't do with this knowledge. And it's like, whoa, hold on, hold up, right? We do at any moment the best that we can do with what we have at that moment. Right? And then, a channel opens. We learn something else. We do something different. Now we're doing the best we can do in that moment with the information that we have at that moment. Right? And we're always in flow, whether we're open to it or not. We're always changing. We're always adjusting. We're always adapting. And even if we feel rigid and we feel like we're not, we're still here. So it's a pretty good sign something's changing.
Well, and I always say, we're never the same person 2 days in a row. Because as soon as you learn something, it creates the opportunity for us to be different. So that's a good thing. And we are like lifelong learners. That is what we're here for, is learning lessons. So every day we learn something. So if we can take the lesson from each day and bring it to our awareness, what a beautiful way to do the spiritual path or the healing path, right? Bringing that stuff forward and doing the self-discovery of that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And if we get to a place where we can take the judgment out of it, right? Because again, how many times do we look at something and go, I've already been here. I've already done this. I felt like I had an aha moment and now here I am again. And it's like, okay, but we're just going deeper. We're just taking it to another level, right? And being able to allow space for that, however it shows up. What does this say?
We have 28 shades of us monthly. Ask the moon. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And we're in psychology, there's this idea too, right? Of like, we're this kind of independent being that has to go through all of these processes and all of that. And yet we are never not impacted by all of the things that happen around us. And it's not just the people that are in our lives, our families, our clients, our bosses, or whatever, right? It's the moon.
Exactly.
And the stars,
our own energy, where we're at.
There's so much that is influential over how we have an experience. Right? And so I think that sometimes, we talk about ego states and things like that, or parts work, or we look at all of the different kind of aspects of ourselves. And, in one sense, we might say, I'm so proud of this. And another part of us is like,
Yeah. Because there's many parts of ourselves, right?
Yeah. And then another part's like, and then another part's like, right? So again, like recognizing that, this fluidity that happens, if we can bring in this love of self and all of the parts of it and all the different ways it shows up, then we can, we can be proud of that, honoring all of it, right? And giving it space.
Well, and that brings to mind, celebrating self. How do we celebrate ourselves? right? Because if we celebrate too much, then we're like in ego, and then, so there's that, people have judgments, as we've been saying, so in our own, like, where is your level of how much is too much to celebrate in our successes? And I guess it comes back to, again, what you're comfortable with. I personally don't think we celebrate enough
No.
in many areas, particularly like self-accomplishment and stuff. And I think it's that fear of judgment from others because of this lifelong, or this big programming that, we've all sat in for so long,
Yeah.
and
Well,
go ahead.
oh yeah, no, just that we need to have space to be authentically ourselves, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And the small successes and the big successes. But I think we look at it and go, wow, that's not, is that big enough? I don't know. I got dressed today. Woohoo!
Well, that's one thing that I do with my clients. So I often will encourage them, we all know the gratitude journal thing, right? I often will encourage my clients to actually take that a step further and write down three things they're grateful for, and then 3 things they're proud of themselves for that day. To start to celebrate those small victories, because there's days when you feel like you haven't accomplished anything, but you can write down, well, I got out of bed, or I got to work on time, or whatever those things are that sometimes are a challenge for you, or it was a challenge today to do it. You can be happy about that for yourself and be like proud of yourself for that accomplishment. And I think if we take more time to do those sort of self pride in self, it helps us to feel all of that more fully.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of people too who have lived experiences of people not celebrating their victories or downplaying them, because it sometimes makes other people uncomfortable and they don't want to honor what somebody else has done.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as that sounds horrible, it is a reality of the world that we live in. And so we have to come to a place where we honor our victories for ourselves, and we have our own little parties. Yeah. And we
buy ourselves Mercedes,
give ourselves time in the hot tub. Exactly.
Very
Nice
good.
dinner out. And yeah, exactly. And we have to be that for ourselves.
Be our own cheerleader, right? That's how we motivate ourselves to go forward.
Yeah.
Really. It helps to motivate.
Especially when we are in situations where other people don't honor it.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't ever, give accolades. They don't ever say, hey, good job. They don't, ever thank you for what you do, right? Like, how many people have those kind of lived experiences, and you have to be like, yeah, right? We have to be able to hold that space for ourselves.
Well, and I'm one, I really, firmly believe that we would all be better off if we were celebrating each other's successes more. I know you said that in our society, we don't very often, and that is true. But I'm very much an advocate of celebrating with people.
Yes, most
over things.
definitely.
I know that's one thing that I really value about Twillow Lifestyle Team. We all celebrate each other's successes all the time. And, I think that's just a beautiful thing when you can celebrate with somebody that you care about and that you love, and share in their joy, share in their pride, all of that. And that brings us back to that sort of the idea of, the pride of lions in a way, right?
Yeah. And the quote on the card, right? And I see myself in everyone. Because it's, we talk about it, but it seems this more like abstract kind of thought that what we do for ourselves is what we put into the world.
Right.
Right. And so what we hold space for, we hold space for in our entire experience. Right. So being able to be that person who embraces the small successes and is lit up by, all of the fun little components of it. We're holding space for that for all. It's not, just a solo thing, but everything starts right here.
Yeah.
Right? And then
Opening the heart.
Yeah.
To feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so, we can even recognize that if we have a success and then we downplay it, and then a friend tells us about a success, and we might go, "Oh, yay!" But a part of us is in this pattern of downplaying.
Right.
Right? And so again, it's that ebb and flow between self and other. How do I balance that? How do I navigate that? And how do I make space for the experience to be what I want it to be? Right? I recognize that downplay. And I go, "Oh, no, not today." I'm going to honor, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to honor your success, and then maybe that'll make room for me to honor my success.
Right, because we are all one.
Yeah.
I want to say hello to Rachel Rose Farber. Hello, she's joined us here.
Hello.
This is her. And here's one that's interesting regarding pride. Okay. This is from Tamara. I think she might be writing.
Okay.
It takes a minute too for it to come from Facebook into here, into the restream. So we'll there we go. I've been recently noticed by celebrities in my field. Very cool.
Wonderful.
That's awesome. So happy for you.
Ready?
I often do this one because,
I get excited.
Because this is loud.
And it's hard to stay excited when I have to stay within this tiny little screen.
I know. It's like, that's awesome. Really happy for you, Tamara. That's amazing.
That is so wonderful.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So often too, right? Like people talk about, I put all this effort in and I do all of this stuff and it doesn't always get recognized and it doesn't always get seen. And people start to wonder like, well, what am I doing wrong? And why isn't, this or that? And, we get to sorry.
Yeah.
Jared, I feel like I'm boasting and kind of tone it down. No. You put that stuff out there, man. Go for it.
People don't know. They can't celebrate with you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If you hadn't put it on here, we wouldn't have known. So we wouldn't have been able to celebrate. Now we can celebrate. And celebrating our sisters is a wonderful thing, right? And brothers.
Yeah. Well, and here, my thoughts are going in 50 million different places.
We've got a lot of guides around us, guys. They're all talking to us.
And they're all talking, and it's like
tricky. Oh. Some days more than others.
Yeah. So, we are given passions. We are given things that light us up. And we are meant to bring those things to the world. And we are meant to have them seen and to have them celebrated. And we are meant for the world to prosper and grow and develop because of these things that we're putting into the world. And to take pride in that is not a look at me, I'm so freaking, it's like I am doing what I'm told to do. I am bringing what I am being given. I am not hoarding it. I am not keeping it to myself. I am not, playing small. Right? That Williamson, right? The quote, like, do not play small. Do not hold back your light. Like, we are meant to shine. And we are meant for that to light others. Right? Like, this is not about, oh, I'm so egotistical. Look at me. Look at me. It's, I am doing what I'm here to do. Holy crap, you can too. Let's do
Yeah.
this.
It's about, let's do it together, right? We don't need to be in competition with each other. Let's do it together and celebrate each other's successes and rise together. That's what community is about, right? So Tamara says, I'm 62 and finally I feel like I'm at the bottom of the celebrity list, but that I finally made it here is what she was trying to say. Because it came, we got this one, and then we got this one. So that I finally made it here. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Because it's been your life's work too, Tamara, right? You've been at this a long time. So it's wonderful that you can feel that accomplishment. Right? It's beautiful.
Definitely. Well, and it's interesting because I go back to human design, right? And I talk about like the fractals and how we have certain people who are going to come into our lives, and those are the people that we're meant to impact, and those are the people that we're meant to touch. And then there's going to be other people that come into our lives and they're not on our line, and that's okay. And we're not meant to touch them, but they're not meant to hear our message. They got to get it from somewhere else. Right. And so even like this, like that is so freaking awesome. And I am so happy for you. And for somebody else who maybe doesn't have that experience, that just might not be their line. And that's okay. Right. Like Tanis and I talk about this all the time. And Tanis is like, running the school and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I am so happy to be behind the scenes, but I love doing this talk. Right.
And she does just as much as I
knows?
do, by the way. In terms of what she's accomplishing in her life, she's like, again, go get her as well. We just do it in very different ways.
In very different ways. And it's all okay. And I think that's the biggest piece in all of it, right? Is it doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't even matter who sees it, although it's really awesome when you get something like that and you have that recognition.
Absolutely.
But if you're doing what you're meant to be doing, the universe is going to be happy with that. Right? And that's really what it's about. And so when we take pride, we're loving our experience. We're loving what we bring to it. We're loving how it interconnects with everything else. It's I guess.
Oh, this is Rachel. Guess what? I think I made a decision. Woohoo!
Oh yeah, Rachel, what was that? Do share.
Yes. She's been trying to make a decision about what to do. So she's made that decision. So it's been a tough one for her. She's gone back and forth. So we can definitely celebrate that for her. Just actually making a decision is a celebration.
Decision.
Right?
Awesome. Good for you.
That's awesome.
And that's it, right? When we talk about honoring all of the successes, even just coming to a decision when it's been really hard, like you get that applause too. Woo! Amazing. Because again, we have to honor every step. If we're taking a step, wow. Woohoo, go.
Because it's much harder to go forward than it is to just sit, right? It takes effort. So we should celebrate our efforts, not just what is seen by others as a win. Some days having an effort and getting up out of bed that should be something to be proud of. Some days, because sometimes it takes a lot more effort than other days, right? Sometimes that should be celebrated.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all relative to where you're at and what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So
honor it all.
Absolutely.
Right? There are days where it's like, I made it through this.
Absolutely.
I can sit down and relax now. I have made it through my day. Awesome.
It could be just, I remembered to call whatever, pharmacy doctor, whatever it is, a simple phone call. And you could be really happy about that. I had one of those today. I was really happy that I remembered. And I was like, nice. Okay. Good. because it sets me up better later on, having made the phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So I was proud of myself for that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be big things. Please celebrate the big stuff, but please celebrate the little stuff every day as well. Have pride.
Mm-hmm.
Have pride in that stuff.
Yeah.
So I know we got started a little bit later today, but we are coming up to our 6 o'clock time.
Holy moly.
I know.
It just flies by.
It does. It does. I don't know where the time goes, but it's a human construct, and we get chatting, and I know you and I can talk all day anyway. We often do.
Yep. And having others comment is just a beautiful, wonderful addition
Absolutely.
to it. So thank you all.
Thank you all for sharing your beautiful energy with us today. And we wish you tons of love. And we have pride in all that you do. And celebrate with us, right? Put your celebrations in. Let's keep that chain going and celebrate with us.
Definitely.
Okay? Sending you all lots of love. I'm Tana Scoglin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy. And you can find me at twillowlifestyle.ca. And Jen?
Yeah, I am Jennifer Jurkofsky, and I am on Twillow Lifestyle, as well as myholisticself.com or myholisticselfcounseling.com. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure being here with you guys, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah, thanks so much. Join us next Monday. Stay tuned for all the events coming up with the Twillow Lifestyle group, Twillow Lifestyle Community, the membership page, and all of that stuff. And we will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Lots of love.